Hello everyone, and welcome to the Saiyan What Ifs. So we are back with an interesting movie on what if Goku was the Saiyan who controlled all elements of creation, Goku x Caulifla x Kefla. But before we start, I just want to remind you to please subscribe to my channel and hit the like button if you enjoy my content. Let's start the story. Chapter 1. Elemental Awakening. The universe breathed. Across the vast expanse of galaxies, through the silence of cosmic dust and the roar of newborn stars, something shifted. It was imperceptible to most beings. This subtle realignment of fundamental forces, but those attuned to the deeper rhythms of existence felt it like a shockwave. On Earth, Son Goku opened his eyes. Blood trickled down his temple as he pushed himself up from the crater his body had created upon impact. The mountainside training session with Vegeta had escalated beyond their usual sparring. Super Saiyan Blue against Super Saiyan Blue. Their godly ki shattering boulders and scorching the earth with each exchange. But something had happened during that last clash, something neither of them anticipated. Kakarot, Vegeta's voice echoed from above, genuine concern breaking through his perpetual scowl as he descended. What the hell was that? Goku blinked, his vision swimming with strange patterns, geometric shapes that seemed to overlay reality itself. I'm not sure. He flexed his fingers, noticing how they seemed to leave trails in the air, like ripples in water. Something feels different. Vegeta landed beside him, arms crossed. Different. You practically disappeared for 3 seconds before reappearing right where Gallic Gun was about to hit you. His eyes narrowed. And your key signature, it vanished completely. Goku stood, brushing dust from his torn GI. The mountain air filled his lungs, somehow tasting both familiar and entirely new. Each breath seemed to connect him to everything around, the stones, the trees, the very molecules of air. He could feel them, not just sense them as key signatures, but feel their composition, their purpose, their place in the grand design. I think I need to see Whis, Goku said quietly. A statement so serious coming from him that Vegeta's eyebrows shot up in surprise. Fine, Vegeta grunted, but his eyes never left Goku's face. But first explain what you experienced. You've never been one to hold back information, Kakarot, no matter how trivial. A breeze swept across the mountainside, carrying with it the scent of pine and distant rain. Goku extended his hand, palm up, and for a moment, the breeze seemed to collect there, a swirling miniature vortex of visible air currents dancing above his skin. When our attacks collided, Goku began, watching the air currents with fascination. I didn't just see the energy. I saw everything it was made of. The particles, the forces holding them together, the space between them. He closed his fist, and the vortex dispersed. And I knew I could change it if I wanted to. Vegeta's expression darkened. That sounds suspiciously like the power of a god of destruction. No. Goku shook his head. Not destruction. Creation. He looked up at the sky, where clouds were gathering in response to the energy they had released. I think we should head to Beerus's planet now. Without waiting for Vegeta's response, Goku placed 2 fingers to his forehead, focusing on Whis' distinct energy signature. But as he initiated instant transmission, something unprecedented occurred. Rather than the familiar sensation of molecular disassembly and reassembly, Goku perceived the very fabric of space folding around him like origami in the hands of a master, creating a direct bridge between his current location and his destination. When reality stabilized, both Saiyans stood on the manicured grounds of Beerus's world. Vegeta stumbled slightly, disoriented. What? How did I? Vegeta sputtered, realizing he'd been transported without physical contact. Kakarot, that's not how your technique works. Before Goku could respond, Whis appeared before them, his staff glowing ominously. The angel's usually placid expression was replaced by one of intense curiosity. Well, Whis said, his melodic voice carrying an undercurrent of tension. I was just about to investigate a rather unusual disturbance in the cosmic balance, and here you are. I should have known you'd be involved, Goku. Goku scratched the back of his head, a gesture of humility at odds with the power that now radiated from him in subtle waves. Sorry, Whis. I think something happened during training. Something indeed. Whis circled Goku slowly, studying him with ancient eyes that had witnessed the birth and death of galaxies. Your energy signature has changed. It's as if He paused, tapping his staff thoughtfully against his chin. Curious. Most curious. What is it? Vegeta demanded, impatience edging his voice. Lord Beerus should be present for this discussion, Whis decided, tapping his staff once on the ground. The air rippled, and the feline god of destruction appeared, clearly interrupted mid-nap, his ears twitching in irritation. This better be important, Beerus growled, yawning widely to display impressive fangs. I was having the most delightful dream about a planet made entirely of pudding. Lord Beerus, Whis said formally. I believe we may be witnessing something unprecedented in this cycle of creation. Beerus's eyes snapped fully open, instantly alert. His gaze locked onto Goku, pupils narrowing to slits. You, he said, pointing one clawed finger. You're different. Goku nodded, unusually solemn. I can feel it. During battle with Vegeta, something unlocked inside me. Show me, Beerus commanded. Floating closer. Instinctively understanding what was needed, Goku extended his hand. This time, he didn't just manipulate air currents, he focused on the very essence of matter itself. Above his palm, particles of light gathered, condensing into a small sphere that pulsed with inner radiance. As they watched, the sphere transformed, shifting from light to solid matter, a perfect crystalline structure that captured the light and refracted it in impossible patterns. He's manipulating fundamental forces, Whis whispered, genuine awe in his voice. Not just energy, but matter itself. Beerus's expression darkened. That's not a Saiyan ability. That's not even a god of destruction ability. He turned to Whis. That's creation magic, Whis finished. The domain of the Grand Priest and those above even our station. Goku closed his hand, and the crystal dissipated back into light, then nothingness. I don't understand what's happening to me, he admitted. His straightforward nature asserting itself despite the cosmic implications. But it feels right, somehow. Like something that was always there, just waiting. Impossible, Beerus muttered, his tail lashing behind him. Unless, his eyes widened slightly. Whis, could it be the prophecy? The one from before this universe's creation. Whis' grip tightened almost imperceptibly on his staff. The elemental Saiyan. That's merely a myth, Lord Beerus. What prophecy? Vegeta interrupted, his pride clearly wounded by this new development in his rival's abilities. Whis sighed, his expression becoming distant as he recalled information so ancient it predated the current universe. There exists a legend, known only to the highest celestial beings, of a warrior who would one day emerge with the ability to manipulate the four fundamental aspects of creation: energy, matter, space, and time. This warrior, Beerus continued, circling Goku with newfound respect and wariness, would possess power rivaling that of the creators themselves, with the potential to either preserve the delicate balance of existence or unravel it completely. Goku frowned, the weight of their words settling uncomfortably on his shoulders. I don't want to unravel anything. I just want to become stronger, to protect my friends and family. Your intentions may be pure, Goku, Whis said gently, but such power attracts attention, not all of it welcome. Even now, ripples of your awakening are spreading across the multiverse. As if summoned by Whis' words, the sky above them fractured with a sound like shattering glass. A portal tore open in the fabric of reality, not the neat circular gateways created by the angels, but a jagged wound in space-time itself. Through this distortion stepped a figure that immediately commanded attention. She was clearly Saiyan, the muscular build and proud stance unmistakable, though smaller than most, with a lithe physique built for speed rather than brute force. Wild black hair with a magenta tint framed fierce features dominated by penetrating eyes that took in the scene with calculating precision. She wore armor unlike any Goku had seen, an evolution of traditional Saiyan design with elements that seemed to incorporate technology beyond Earth's understanding. So, the female Saiyan said, her voice carrying both challenge and curiosity, you're the disturbance I've been tracking across 3 universes. Her eyes locked with Goku's. You don't look like much for someone who just sent shockwaves through the cosmic firmament. Beerus stepped forward, his aura flaring with divine energy. You dare intrude upon my domain, Saiyan. Identify yourself before I decide your existence is unnecessary for this universe's harmony. The woman smirked, showing no fear in the face of a destroyer god. My name is Caulifla, last descendant of House Solara from Universe 6. She crossed her arms, her attention never leaving Goku. And I'm here because this man just did something that should be impossible. He altered the fundamental vibration pattern of creation itself. Universe 6. Vegeta's interest peaked. You're from Champa's universe. How did you cross between realities without an angel's assistance? Caulifla reached to her wrist, where a device of unfamiliar design glinted metallic blue in the light. Let's just say I have resources. When you're the last keeper of ancient Saiyan knowledge, you learn a few tricks. Ancient Saiyan knowledge, Goku repeated, intrigued despite the tension of the moment. Something about this woman resonated with him on a level beyond physical attraction, a recognition of kindred spirit, of shared destiny. Knowledge your Universe 7 Saiyans apparently lost, Caulifla replied, her tone softening slightly with genuine curiosity. Knowledge of what we once were, before we became mere warriors. She took a step toward Goku, and instantly Whis positioned himself between them, staff raised defensively. I mean him no harm, Caulifla said, raising her hands in a gesture of peace that somehow managed to seem both sincere and slightly mocking. In fact, I'm probably the only person in the multiverse who may be able to help him understand what's happening. And why should we trust you? Vegeta demanded. Caulifla's eyes flashed with challenge. Because like him, I carry the blood of those who shaped stars before your gods were even concepts in the cosmic mind. She looked directly at Goku again. You felt it, didn't you? When your power awakened, a connection to everything, as if the universe itself is an extension of your body. Goku's eyes widened. Yes, exactly that. He moved past Whis, ignoring the angel's sound of protest. How did you know? Because it's written in our oldest texts, Caulifla said, her voice dropping to a near whisper. The awakening of the elemental Saiyan, the one who would remember what we truly are. The air between them seemed to vibrate with potential, with recognition of something ancient and powerful. Goku felt a pull toward this fierce warrior woman that transcended physical attraction, a sense that their meeting was somehow inevitable, written in the very code of existence. Beerus cleared his throat loudly, breaking the moment. As fascinating as this reunion of cosmic significance might be, we have a more immediate concern. If Goku's awakening sent ripples through the multiverse as you claim, then others will have felt it too, beings far less friendly than an interdimensional Saiyan with boundary issues. Whis nodded gravely. Lord Beerus is correct. Powers that have remained dormant for eons may stir in response. His gaze shifted between Goku and Caulifla. If the legends of the elemental Saiyan are true, then the balance of all creation may soon face its greatest test. Then we prepare, Goku said with characteristic determination, though his voice carried new depth, as if speaking from a well of wisdom he hadn't possessed hours earlier. But first, I need to understand what's happening to me. He turned to Caulifla. You said you could help. Caulifla's lips curved in a smile that managed to be both challenging and approving. I can show you what the texts describe, but mastering elemental powers, that's something not even our ancestors fully achieved. Her eyes gleamed with excitement barely contained. But I've spent my life studying the possibilities, waiting for the prophecy to fulfill itself. And here you are. Wait, Vegeta interjected, his brow furrowed with suspicion. If these elemental powers are part of Saiyan heritage, why have they manifested in Kakarot and not in me or any other pure-blooded Saiyan? An excellent question, Prince Vegeta, Whis acknowledged. Perhaps our visitor has insight. Caulifla studied Goku thoughtfully, circling him with analytical precision. According to our histories, the ability remained dormant in our bloodlines for millennia, awaiting specific conditions. She stopped in front of Goku. The texts speak of one who dies and is reborn, who touches godhood but returns to mortal form, who knows both the silence between stars and the heart of a sun. A.W. Area whose path crosses boundaries no other has traversed. Goku's life flashed through his mind. His death against Raditz, his transformations, his journeys through other world, his attainment and relinquishment of divine power forms. Each experience had reshaped him, each battle had pushed him beyond previous limitations. It seems, Whis observed, that Goku's unique life experiences have activated what was always latent within his Saiyan genetics. But why track me across universes? Goku asked Caulifla directly. What do you gain from finding the elemental Saiyan? For the first time, Caulifla's confident demeanor faltered slightly. Because the awakening signals the coming of darkness, she replied, her voice tight with controlled emotion. A force that consumed my world, that hunts the last remnants of Saiyan knowledge across the multiverse. A being of anti-creation that our texts name only as Lord Entropy. Beerus hissed, his fur standing on end. Entropy is no lord, it is the final state of all things. The heat death that awaits every universe at its natural conclusion. Not just a concept, Caulifla corrected grimly. A conscious entity that embodies cosmic decay. That feeds on the dissolution of order. Our ancestors fought it before recorded history, barely managing to seal it away between dimensions. Her eyes locked with Goku's. A seal that weakens with each universal reset. And that will respond to the emergence of elemental power with renewed hunger. So my awakening may have accelerated its return, Goku concluded, the implications settling heavily upon him. Yes, Caulifla confirmed, but you're also the only hope of stopping it permanently. That's why I've searched for you since the first tremors shook the dimensional barriers 3 years ago. 3 years. Goku frowned. But this just happened today. Whis tapped his staff thoughtfully. Time flows differently between dimensional planes. What manifested fully today may have been gradually developing since your first contact with Divine Ki. Vegeta scoffed. Convenient prophecies, interdimensional threats, ancient powers. This sounds suspiciously like a scheme to manipulate Kakarot. I don't sense deception from her, Goku said with surprising certainty. He didn't just mean her key signature or body language, somehow, he could perceive the very patterns of truth in her words. Vibrating in harmony with reality itself. Because there is none, Caulifla retorted, glaring at Vegeta. I've sacrificed everything tracking the elemental awakening. My position is Universe 6 a champion, relationships, safety. Her fists clenched at her sides. My entire homeworld was consumed by Entropy's first incursion. I'm the last of my bloodline because I was off-world researching ancient Saiyan outposts when it happened. The raw pain in her voice silenced even Vegeta's skepticism. Goku felt an unexpected surge of protectiveness toward this fierce warrior he'd just met, not because she seemed vulnerable, but because he recognized in her the same driving purpose that had always motivated him, the desire to protect what matters, no matter the personal cost. I believe you, Goku said simply. He extended his hand toward her, palm up, an offer of alliance and something more, connection. Show me what I need to know. Caulifla hesitated only a moment before placing her hand in his. The instant their skin touched, energy cascaded between them, not the violent discharge of battling ki, but a harmonic resonance that sent ripples of golden light spiraling around their joined hands. Fascinating, Whis murmured, leaning forward to observe the phenomenon. A catalytic reaction between compatible energy signatures. Goku felt knowledge flooding into him, not as structured thought but as primal understanding. Images of ancient Saiyans performing feats beyond modern comprehension, manipulating not just ki but the fundamental building blocks of reality itself. He saw civilizations risen and fallen, battles against cosmic horrors, and the gradual sealing away of these abilities as the Saiyan race evolved toward physical combat prowess. Simultaneously, Caulifla gasped as her connection to Goku revealed to her the full extent of his journey, every battle, every death, every transformation. She witnessed his pure heart tested but never corrupted, his simple joy in existence even amid unimaginable challenges. When they finally released each other's hands, both stood transformed by the exchange. You've died multiple times, Caulifla whispered, awe and disbelief mingling in her voice. You've fought gods, demons, emperors, and you've spent lifetimes searching ancient knowledge, Goku replied with equal wonder. Traveling between ruins of civilizations older than the Kais themselves. Beerus cleared his throat impatiently. As touching as this mutual admiration society is, we have more pressing concerns. If this, Lord Entropy, is indeed awakening in response to Goku's transformation, we need to prepare. Agreed, Whis said. Goku must learn to control these new abilities quickly. Unmastered elemental powers could be as dangerous to our universe as entropy itself. I can help with that, Caulifla offered, her customary confidence returning. The ancient texts include training methodologies, though they're largely theoretical since no one has knifed these abilities in recorded history. Then we begin now, Goku declared, his expression serious but eyes alight with the prospect of new challenges. Vegeta, I need you to explain things to Chi-Chi and the others. Tell them. He paused, considering. Tell them I'm training with Whis for something important. Vegeta crossed his arms. And what will you actually be doing? Goku looked toward the vast expanse of Beerus's world, with its impossible physics and ancient mysteries. Learning to become what I was always meant to be, apparently. I'm staying to observe, Vegeta stated flatly, making it clear this wasn't a request. If these elemental powers are part of our Saiyan heritage, then I have every right to witness their development. Actually, Whis interjected delicately. Training of this nature requires isolated space and minimal energy interference. Lord Beerus and I will create a specialized dimension where Goku can practice safely without risking damage to the cosmic fabric. And I suppose I'm not invited, Vegeta growled. In time, perhaps, Whis placated. But initial control must be established first. Surely you understand the prudence of this approach. Given what happened during your mere sparring session. Before Vegeta could object further, the ground beneath them trembled. Across the usually serene landscape of Beerus's world, fissures appeared, leaking darkness that seemed to consume rather than merely obscure light. It's already beginning, Caulifla whispered, her face paling. Entropy senses the elemental awakening. These are just probes, tests of dimensional boundaries. Quote, Beerus snarled, violet energy crackling around his form. Nothing breaches my domain without permission. He thrust his hand toward the nearest fissure, Ruction energy lancing into the darkness. Instead of dissipating, the darkness absorbed the energy, the fissure widening in response. Conventional attacks won't work, Caulifla warned. Entropy feeds on energy, especially destructive force. It's the dissolution of creation itself. Goku stepped forward, some new instinct guiding him. He raised his hand toward the spreading darkness, not with a aggression but with a sense of recognition, one fundamental force acknowledging another. I see you, he said quietly, words that carried power beyond their simplicity. But this isn't your time or place. From his extended palm erupted not the familiar blue-white of his ki, but a golden radiance that seemed to contain within it every color imaginable. This light didn't attack the darkness, it defined boundaries, restored definition. Reinforced the natural laws of reality against encroachment. The fissures trembled, then slowly began to close, the darkness retreating with a sound like distant thunder. Goku maintained his focus until the last trace vanished, then lowered his hand, breathing heavily from exertion. What? He panted. What did I just do? You reinforced the dimensional boundaries, Caulifla explained, looking at him with new respect. Creation energy counteracting entropic dissolution. The texts described it, but seeing it, she shook her head in wonder. Instinctive application of elemental power. Whis observed. Impressive for your first conscious use, but dangerously unrefined. The energy expenditure was far greater than necessary. Goku nodded, feeling the drain now. His legs suddenly wobbled, and he would have fallen if Caulifla hadn't moved with surprising speed to support him, her arm around his waist. Easy, she murmured. Elemental manipulation takes different toll than ki usage. Your body needs to adapt. Goku was acutely aware of her proximity, of the strength in her compact frame as she helped him remain standing. There was something comfortingly familiar about her despite their recent meeting, perhaps an echo of their shared heritage, or something deeper neither could yet name. We have less time than I thought, Beerus stated grimly. Whis, prepare the training dimension immediately. If those were merely probes, we must assume a larger incursion will follow. Yes, my lord. Whis raised his staff, the gem at its tip glowing with intensifying brilliance. I'll need approximately 1 hour to establish the necessary dimensional parameters. I'll help Goku recover in the meantime, Caulifla volunteered, guiding him toward a nearby bench beneath one of the twisted trees that dotted Beerus's landscape. Once seated, Goku leaned back, closing his eyes briefly as his energy slowly replenished. You knew what to do, he observed when he opened them again. Finding Caulifla studying him intently. About the darkness. Theory only, she admitted. The texts are explicit about entropy's nature but frustratingly vague on practical countermeasures. What you did was instinctive, not something I could have taught you. A rare moment of vulnerability crossed her features. I've spent years preparing for this, and in 5 seconds. You accomplished what I only understood in abstract. That's not true, Goku countered with unexpected insight. When our hands touched, I saw everything you've learned, every sacrifice you've made. Without that knowledge, I wouldn't have recognized what was happening or known how to respond, even instinctively. Caulifla looked away, uncomfortable with the recognition. You saw all that, yes. Goku's directness was gentled by genuine admiration. You're extraordinary, Caulifla. Most people would have broken under what you've endured. A faint flush colored her cheeks, an unusual sight on such a self-possessed warrior. Most people didn't have the luxury of breaking. When you're the last of something, continuity becomes your only purpose. I understand that better than most, Goku said quietly, thinking of his own position as one of the last pure-blooded Saiyans of Universe 7. Though I didn't grow up knowing my heritage like you did. Perhaps that's why the elemental powers manifested in you, Caulifla suggested, thoughtfully. You weren't bound by preconceptions of what a Saiyan should be. You developed in response to your experiences rather than cultural expectations. Before Goku could respond, Vegeta approached, his expression still guarded but less openly hostile. Whis is nearly ready with the training dimension, he announced. Then, with visible reluctance, he addressed Caulifla. Your knowledge of ancient Saiyan history, is there more? Caulifla raised an eyebrow at this apparent olive branch. Volumes more. My ancestors were record keepers as well as warriors. When Universe 6 Saiyans evolved past planetary destruction, we didn't abandon our history, we preserved it. I would appreciate learning what was lost to our branch of the race, Vegeta said stiffly. Pride making the request difficult. When this crisis is contained, Caulifla agreed with surprising diplomacy, I'll share what I know. Vegeta nodded curtly, then turned to Goku. Don't get yourself killed with these new powers, Kakarot. I still intend to defeat you properly one day. Goku grinned, some of his usual lightheartedness returning. Wouldn't dream of denying you the chance, Vegeta. As Vegeta walked away, Caulifla studied Goku with renewed curiosity. Your relationship with him is complex. Vegeta. Goku shrugged. He's my friend, my rival, sometimes my enemy, occasionally my savior. We've both changed a lot over the years. In my universe, Saiyans never developed such bonds, Caulifla mused. Alliance, yes. Respect, certainly. But friendship, that was seen as weakness. And what do you think? Goku asked, genuinely curious about her perspective. Caulifla considered the question seriously. I think isolation nearly destroyed me after I lost everything. I think purpose kept me functioning, but connection. She looked directly at him, her gaze unflinching. Connection might be what saves us all in the end. Something unspoken passé, between them in that moment. Recognition of shared burden, of complementary purposes, of potential beyond mere alliance. Before either could pursue the thought, Whis appeared beside them in a shimmer of light. The training dimension is prepared, the angel announced. Lord Beerus has decided to personally oversee the initial phase, given the cosmic implications. Goku stood, his strength largely restored. Will I be able to return to Earth? My family. Time flows differently in the dimension I've created, Whis explained. What will be weeks for you will pass as mere hours here. However, communication will be impossible until you emerge. I understand. Goku turned to Caulifla. Are you coming with us? Try to stop me, she challenged with a flash of her fierce smile. I've tracked the elemental Saiyan across 3 universes. I'm not missing the culmination of my life's work. Together they followed Whis to where Beerus waited beside what appeared to be a tear in reality, not the jagged wound of entropy's probing, but a precisely crafted doorway shimmering with opalescent light. Beyond this threshold lies a space outside normal universal laws, Whis explained. I've ignited it specifically to contain elemental energy manifestations without risking damage to our reality. It's also shielded from detection by entities sensitive to such power. A cosmic panic room, Caulifla summarized with characteristic directness. Crudely put, but essentially correct, Whis acknowledged. You'll find everything needed for physical sustenance inside, along with training a par. Addis calibrated to elemental energy parameters. Beerus fixed Goku with an intense stare. Understand this, Saiyan. What awakens in you now exceeds even my authority to control. The power to manipulate fundamental creation forces carries responsibility beyond mortal comprehension. I never asked for this power, Goku said honestly. Few worthy of power ever do, Beerus replied, wisdom momentar. Illy replacing his usual capricious demeanor. It's those who desire power most who should be granted it least. He glanced at Caulifla. Watch him carefully, Universe 6 Saiyan. Your knowledge may be he difference between mastery and catastrophe. I intend to, she affirmed, standing straighter under the god of destruction's scrutiny. Whis opened the dimensional doorway fully with a gesture of his staff. You may enter when ready. I'll retrieve you once sufficient training time has elapsed or if external circumstances demand your return. Goku took a deep breath, centering himself before this new journey. He looked at Caulifla, finding in her determined expression a mirror of his own resolve. Without words, they stepped forward together, crossing the threshold into blazing light. The training dimension materialized around them as the portal sealed behind them. They stood in a vast expanse that defied conventional description, a space where reality seemed malleable, where the very air hummed with potential. Distant horizons shifted with crystalline structures that caught light from no discernible source, and beneath their feet, the ground felt simultaneously solid and responsive, as if aware of their presence. This is, Goku began, struggling to find words for the sensations flooding through him. Perfect, Caulifla finished, her eyes wide with wonder. A place where creation itself is fluid. She turned to him, excitement and determination mingling in her expression. Are you ready to become what you were born to be, Son Goku? To remember what Saiyans were before we became mere warriors. Goku met her gaze, feeling something profound shift within him. Acceptance of a destiny he hadn't known awaited him, recognition of a purpose beyond even the protection of Earth. In this fierce woman from another universe, he sensed not just an ally but a kindred spirit essential to the path ahead. I'm ready, he affirmed, his voice carrying new resonance in this place between realities. As he spoke, golden energy rippled across his skin, responding to his resolve, not the familiar aura of Super Saiyan transformation, but something more fundamental, as if reality itself acknowledged his awakening. Caulifla's answering smile held challenge, respect, and something deeper that neither yet dared name. Then let's begin. Across the multiverse, in places ancient and forgotten, beings long dormant stirred in response to the elemental Saiyan's declaration. The cosmic game board was set, the pieces in motion. The age of equilibrium was ending, and the era of fundamental forces had begun. Chapter 1 End Chapter 2, Parallel Warriors. The ground beneath Goku's feet shifted from solid to liquid and back again in the span of a heartbeat. He stumbled, caught himself, then focused on the sensation of matter transforming around him. Not an external change, a fundamental alteration in how atoms arranged themselves in response to his consciousness. Again, Caulifla commanded, circling him with critical eyes. 3 weeks into their training, she'd abandoned any pretense of deference to the prophesied elemental Saiyan. Her teaching style blended military precision with scholarly intensity. You're still thinking too much about the end result and not enough about the process. Sweat beaded on Goku's forehead. I'm trying to. Don't try. No. Caulifla snapped her fingers near his ear. Matter doesn't question itself. It simply is, until it becomes something else. The training dimension Whis had created responded to their needs with uncanny precision. Currently, it resembled a vast plain stretching to crystal horizons, the ground beneath them a neutral canvas for Goku's attempts at matter manipulation. They'd discovered early that his elemental abilities functioned on 4 distinct levels: energy manipulation, an extension of his existing key control, matter transformation, spatial distortion, and temporal adjustment, each progressively more difficult to master and more dangerous if mishandled. Goku closed his eyes, reaching for that place of clarity he'd glimpsed during his awakening. Not the focused battle mind of a warrior, but something deeper, the consciousness that recognized itself as part of creation's pattern rather than separate from it. Better, Caulifla murmured, her voice softening as she sensed his approach to the correct mental state. Now extend your awareness into the substrate. Feel its composition, its potential, its nature. The ground beneath Goku hummed with possibility. Unlike traditional ki sensing, which detected life energy, elemental awareness perceived the very building blocks of existence, quarks and leptons dancing in quantum patterns, forces binding and releasing in endless cycles of becoming. He exhaled slowly, allowing his consciousness to merge with these patterns rather than imposing his will upon them. The transformation began at his feet, a ripple of restructuring matter spreading outward in concentric circles. The neutral ground substance shifted, molecules realigning, atomic bonds breaking and reforming. Where before there had been uniform density, now a garden bloomed, living plants sprouting from transmuted matter. Each perfectly formed down to the cellular level. Yes, Caulifla's excitement broke his concentration, but the transformation held, flowers and grasses swaying in a breeze that hadn't existed moments before. You've done it. True matter conversion, not just energy-matter exchange. Goku opened his eyes, blinking in surprise at the verdant circles surrounding him. Unlike his previous attempts, which had produced crude approximations or unstable transformations that quickly reverted to their original state, these plants were fully realized living organisms. There, he reached down to touch a delicate blue flower. Real. Of course they're real. Caulifla knelt beside him, examining his creation with scientific curiosity. Elemental manipulation doesn't create illusions, it restructures fundamental reality. She plucked one of the blooms, twirling it between her fingers. Perfect cellular structure, proper chlorophyll development, even capillary systems for water transport. You didn't just change the appearance of matter, you guided its transformation into something entirely new. Goku's stomach growled loudly, breaking the moment of scientific appreciation. He grinned sheepishly. Sorry. Turns out elemental manipulation makes me even hungrier than regular training. Caulifla rolled her eyes, but her lips quirked in amusement. Everything makes you hungry. She stood, brushing off her knees. Let's break for food. You've earned it, and we should discuss next steps. The training dimension's adaptive nature had provided them with a comfortable base camp. A simple dwelling that expanded or contracted based on their needs, currently nestled beneath floating crystalline formations that refracted the omnipresent light into rainbow patterns. Inside, food appeared in a preparation area that somehow always contained exactly what they required. As Goku devoured his typically enormous meal, Caulifla watched him with the mixture of disgust and fascination she'd maintained since their first shared meal. Her own eating habits, while hearty by human standards, seemed delicate compared to his voracious appetite. I still don't understand, she said. Between significantly more measured bites, how your digestive system processes that much food without exploding. Goku swallowed an improbably large mouthful. Chi-Chi asks the same thing. I think it's just how Saiyans are built. He paused, curiosity overtaking hunger momentarily. Though Universe 6 Saiyans seem different in some ways. Evolution diverged when our universes separated, Caulifla confirmed. In Universe 6, Saiyans developed beyond the conquest phase, retaining our warrior instincts but channeling them into protection rather than destruction. A shadow crossed her features. Not that it saved us in the end. Goku set down his bowl, sensing the shift in her mood. Over the weeks of intensive training, he'd learned to read Caulifla's emotional states with increasing accuracy. The subtle tightening around her eyes that indicated painful memories, the slight lift of her chin when pride masked vulnerability. You haven't talked much about what happened, he said gently. To your world, I mean. Quote. Caulifla's jaw tightened. For a moment, he thought she would deflect as she had whenever the subject arose. Instead, she set her own food aside and met his gaze directly. 3 years ago, by your timeline, I was off-world researching ancient Saiyan outposts on planet Sadala's third moon. Her voice took on a clinical quality, as if distance could diminish the pain. I'd found references to elemental manipulation in texts older than our recorded history and was looking for additional sources. The transmissions from home stopped suddenly. No distress signal, no warning. Just silence. She rose, pacing the small space with contained energy. When I returned, there was nothing left. Not destruction, absence, as if someone had simply erased the planet's existence from the fabric of reality, leaving only void where Sadala had been. Her hands clenched into fists. 70 billion lives, including every remaining member of my bloodline, gone in an instant. I'm so sorry, Goku said quietly. The words felt inadequate against such loss. Caulifla waved away his sympathy. Champa and Vados investigated. They found what they called a reality C. Consumption event, something they'd never encountered before. The only evidence left behind was a resonance pattern in the dimensional fabric. She stopped pacing, looking at Goku intently. A pattern I later recognized in ancient texts describing the entity called entropy. And that's when you started searching for the elemental Saiyan. She nodded. The texts were clear, only elemental manipula. Tian could counter entropy's consumption. I spent months convincing Vados to help me search other universes for signs of awakening elemental abilities. When the first ripples appeared 3 years ago, I devoted everything to tracking them. Quote, the ripples Whis mentioned, from when I first contacted Divine Key. Yes, your battle with Beerus sent subtle vibrations through the cosmic firmament, detect. Able only to those specifically looking for them. A hint of grudging admiration colored her voice. You've been causing dimensional disturbances for years without even realizing it. Goku rubbed the back of his head sheepishly. I seem to have a talent for stirring up trouble. An understatement, Caulifla muttered, but without real annoyance. She returned to her seat, her posture less rigid now that the hardest part of her story had been told. Your match with Jiren during the Tournament of Power created the strongest resonance yet, almost strong enough for complete elemental awakening. So, messing about pushing beyond your limits against impossible odds catalyzed the dormant potential. And our sparring match with Vegeta finally pushed it over the edge, Goku concluded, pieces falling into place. Exactly. Caulifla leaned forward, her natural intensity returning. But here's what concerns me. If I could track your awakening, so could other entities sensitive to dimensional vibrations. Including entropy itself. Goku frowned, considering this. Those probes on Beerus's world, they appeared immediately after my awakening. That seems too quick for coincidence. Precisely. Caulifla's expression darkened. Entropy has been seeking the elemental Saiyan as long as I have, but for opposite reasons. Where I see salvation, it sees ultimate consumption, the power to finally break the cycle of creation and return everything to primal chaos. The implications settled heavily between them. Goku's natural optimism warred with the weight of responsibility, not just for Earth or Universe 7, but for existence itself. Is that why you're pushing so hard with the training? He asked. You think we're running out of time? I know we are. Caulifla's voice carried absolute certainty. The dimensional barriers are already weakening. Those probes were just the beginning. Goku nodded, seriousness replacing his usual carefree demeanor. Then we step up the training. If matter manipulation is working, we should move to space manipulation next. Caulifla blinked, surprised by his strategic assessment. That's actually the correct progression. Energy to matter to space to time. In order of dimensional complexity. Goku grinned. I'm a fast learner when properly motivated. And preventing universal destruction seems like pretty good motivation. Indeed, a rare genuine smile crossed Caulifla's features, transforming her usual intensity into something warmer. Though I'm still getting used to your ability to treat cosmic catastrophe with such casual confidence. Quote, being worried doesn't make you fight better, Goku said simply. It just makes you tired before the real battle starts. Caulifla considered this, head tilted thoughtfully. A surprisingly philosophical position from someone who nearly crashed into 3 trees yesterday because he was thinking about lunch. Hey, those trees moved, Goku protested, though his eyes sparkled with humor. These NTS of lightness had become increasingly common between them, brief respites from the intensity of training and the looming threat. The trees were stationary. Your attention wasn't. Caulifla rose, signaling the end of their break. Finish eating. We need to. She froze mid-sentence, her head snapping toward the far wall of their dwelling as if hearing something beyond Goku's perception. Her expression shifted from relaxed to combat-ready in an instant. Something's coming, she whispered, muscles tensing. A disturbance in the dimensional barrier. Goku extended his senses, reaching beyond deconventional key detection to the new awareness of cosmic patterns his training had developed. He felt it immediately. A vibration in reality itself, like ripples spreading across the surface of a pond. Not the consuming void of entropy's probes, but something else, something familiar. It's not hostile, he said with certainty. It feels Saiyan. Caulifla's eyes widened. Impossible. I'm the last. She stopped. A flash of realization crossing her features. Unless. The air before them shimmered, reality folding inward upon itself. Unlike the clean dimensional doorway Whis had creaked, or the jagged wounds of entropy's probes, this opening appeared hesitant, almost tentative, a careful parting of dimensional veils. Through this iridescent portal stepped a young woman with a slender build and gentle features that contrasted sharply with Caulifla's fierce appearance. Her dark hair hung straight past her shoulders, and her eyes held a perpetual wariness that suggested hard-won survival. Despite her unassuming demeanor, Goku instantly recognized the latent power contained within her, Saiyan energy with unusual harmonic patterns unlike any he'd encountered before. Caulifla's shocked exclamation was followed by an uncharacteristic display of emotion as she lunged forward, wrapping the newcomer in a fierce embrace. "How? I thought you were dead." Kale's voice was soft but carried unexpected depth. She returned Caulifla's embrace briefly before stepping back, her eyes never leaving the other woman's face. "I nearly was. When Sadala vanished, I was in the abandoned training outpost on the Outer Rim, practicing the meditation techniques you taught me." Her gaze lowered. "I felt everything disappear, everyone. But how did you find us?" Caulifla demanded, her hands still gripping Kale's shoulders as if afraid she might vanish. "This dimension is sealed from outside detection." Kale's eyes shifted to Goku, widening slightly as she took his measure. "I followed the elemental resonance." She inclined her head respectfully. "You're him, aren't you? The one from the ancient texts. Your awakening created ripples I could track across dimensional boundaries." "You could sense that?" Goku asked, impressed and curious. "Even Whis said this place was shielded." "Kale has unique sensitivities," Caulifla explained, her protective posture toward the younger Saiyan obvious. "She carries a rare genetic variation that manifests as the legendary Saiyan form in our universe." Goku's eyebrows rose in recognition. "Like Broly in our universe. A burst. RKER transformation with incredible power." Kale flinched slightly at the description, but Caulifla shook her head. "Similar but different. Universe 6 evolved differently, remember? Kale's variant D doesn't just increase battle power, it enhances perception of cosmic energies." Pride colored Caulifla's voice. "She's been helping me research elemental manipulation for years. Her ability to sense dimensional resonances is how we located the ancient texts in the first place." "That's amazing," Goku said sincerely, studying Kale with new appreciation. "In our universe, the legendary Saiyan form is almost entirely destructive. A useful improvement in your evolutionary line." Kale blushed faintly at the praise, her natural shyness evident. "It's not always controllable," she admitted softly. Strong emotions can still trigger the berserker aspects. "Which is why we've been working on control techniques," Caulifla added, her protective instinct obvious. She turned back to Kale, her expression growing serious. "But that doesn't explain how you crossed dimensional boundaries. Even with sensing abilities, traveling between dimensions requires this." Kale held up her wrist, where a device similar to but more elaborate than Caulifla's gleamed with subtle energy. "I found it in the archives beneath the Eastern Temple, where you were researching before." She hesitated, "before everything happened." Caulifla's eyes widened in recognition. "The Nexus Band. But the text said it was theoretical, a concept our ancestors never successfully created." "They were wrong." Kale's voice carried quiet certainty. "It was hidden in a chamber that only opened to genetic signatures from the royal bloodline. I couldn't access it, but after," her voice faltered momentarily, "after Sadala vanished, something changed. The chamber recognized me." Goku watched this exchange with fascination. The easy familiarity between the two women spoke of a deep history, yet there was something unresolved beneath their interactions, a tension he couldn't quite identify. "So you've been searching for me all this time?" Caulifla asked, her usual commanding tone softened with what sounded almost like guilt. Kale nodded. "At first just to find if you'd survived. Then, when I felt the elemental awakening begin, I knew you'd be tracking it too." Her gaze shifted to Goku again, assessment in her gentle eyes. "The ancient text spoke of a warrior who would remember what Saiyans were before the forgetting. Who would reawaken the elemental birthright of our race. That's what Caulifla's been teaching me," Goku confirmed, gesturing to the garden still visible through the dwelling's transparent wall. "Though I'm still figuring out how it all works." Kale's eyes widened as she noticed the transmuted landscape outside. You've already achieved matter manipulation. She turned to Caulifla. How long have you been training? 3 weeks in this dimensional pocket, Caulifla replied. Though, time flows differently here than in baseline reality. 3 weeks, Kale repeated, clearly impressed. She studied Goku with renewed interest. The text suggested years of preparation would be necessary before stable transmutation could be achieved. Goku rubbed the back of his head sheepishly. I've always been a quick study with new techniques. An understatement, Caulifla muttered, though. Pride in her student's progress colored her tone. He's advancing at rates that defy all historical precedent. Then there's hope, Kale said quietly, relief evident in her posture. Because we have less time than you think. She reached into a pocket of her tunic, withdrawing a small crystalline device that projected a 3-dimensional image when activated, a star map showing multiple universes represented as interconnected bubbles. Within this display, dark fracture lines spread across dimensional boundaries like cracks in glass. Entropy's incursions are accelerating, she explained, rotating the projection to highlight particularly damaged areas. These breaches began appearing shortly after Sadala vanished. At first, they were isolated and temporary, dimensional hiccups that self-repaired. But in the last 3 months, they've become persistent and expanding. Caulifla studied the projection with growing alarm. These patterns, they're following the weakest points in the dimensional fabric. Precisely. Kale expanded a particular section, showing a dark void where several universe bubbles connected. This is where Sadala was. The consumption created a weak point that's now spreading like a tear in fabric. And these other points? Goku asked, pointing to smaller fractures scattered throughout the projection. Natural dimensional boundaries, Kale explained. Places where universes connect most closely. Entropy is probing systematically, testing resistance. Her gentle features hardened with determination. It's searching for something specific. Me, Goku concluded grimly. Or rather, the elemental powers. Kale nodded. The ancient texts describe a cosmic cycle: creation, maintenance, dissolution, renewal. Entropy represents the dissolution phase, but something has corrupted its function. Instead of balanced decay that feeds into renewal, it seeks total consumption without rebirth. An elemental manipulation is the counterforce, Caulifla added, the pieces clicking into place. The power that maintains balance between creation and dissolution. A power our Saiyan ancestors once wielded as guardians of cosmic balance, Kale confirmed. Before they forgot their purpose and became merely warriors. Goku absorbed this information, connecting it with the intuitive understanding he'd gained since his awakening. The images he'd glimpsed during his hand contact with Caulifla, ancient Saiyans performing feats beyond modern comprehension, took on new significance. So I'm not just learning these abilities to fight entropy, he realized. I am remembering what Saiyans were meant to be all along. Yes, Kale's voice carried the weight of ancient knowledge. The texts call it anamnesis, the removal of forgetting. Not gaining something new, but recalling something primal. Caulifla paced the small space, energy radiating from her compact form. This changes our training approach. If entropy's incursions are accelerating this quickly, we need to focus on specific countermeasures rather than systematic progression through the elemental disciplines. I disagree, Kale said with unexpected firmness. Both Goku and Caulifla looked at her in surprise. The quiet Saiyan contradicting her more dominant companion seemed out of character. The texts are clear about one thing. Incomplete elemental awakening is more dangerous than none at all. Partial control creates dimensional instabilities that entropy can exploit. But we don't have time for full mastery, Caulifla argued, frustration evident in her tense posture. Perhaps we do, Goku interjected thoughtfully. Both women turned to him. This dimension was created. It exists outside normal temporal flow, right? We've been here 3 weeks, but how much time has passed outside? Whis mentioned a significant differential, Caulifla confirmed. Perhaps hours instead of weeks. Then we use that to our advantage, Goku suggested. We stay here until I've mastered enough elemental control to effectively counter entropy, no matter how long it takes in here. And if entropy launches a major incursion while we're training, Caulifla challenged, we'd be trapped in here, unaware. I can monitor external dimensional activity, Kale offered, indicating the crystalline device. The Nexus Band allows me to maintain awareness of baseline reality while in pocket dimensions. If crisis demands immediate intervention, we'll know. Caulifla considered this, then nodded sharply. Acceptable compromise. We continue progressive training but accelerate the timeline. She turned to Goku. You've shown aptitude for matter manipulation. We'll consolidate that skill, then move quickly to spatial manipulation. And I can help, Kale added with quiet confidence. My sensitivity to dimensional energies should make spatial manipulation training more efficient. Perfect, Goku said, his characteristic optimism returning. 2 teachers are better than 1, especially when facing universal destruction. Caulifla rolled her eyes at his casual tone but didn't contradict him. Instead, she turned to Kale with a softer expression than she typically showed. I still can't believe you survived. All this time, I thought I was the last. I never stopped looking for you, Kale replied simply, years of unspoken emotion in those few words. Even when everyone said it was impossible, Goku watched this exchange with newfound understanding. The tension he'd sensed between them wasn't conflict but something deeper, a bond tested by separation and grief, by survivor's guilt and desperate hope. He recognized in their reunion something he'd experienced himself in battles where loved ones were lost and miraculously returned, the precious fragility of connection in a universe filled with dangers. We should resume training immediately, Caulifla declared, her moment of vulnerability passing as quickly as it had appeared. Kale, you should observe Goku's current able. It is to establish a baseline for your instruction. Kale nodded, following them outside to the transmuted garden. As Goku demonstrated his matter manipulation abilities, creating increasingly complex transformations under Caulifla's critical guidance, Kale watched with scholarly attention, occasionally asking precise questions that revealed her deep theoretical knowledge. The molecular bonds are stable, she observed, examining a crystal formation Goku had transmuted from simple stone. But the atomic alignment shows residual uncertainty patterns. Meaning? Goku asked, genuinely curious. About the technical aspects his intuitive approach sometimes missed. Your transformations might revert under certain stress conditions, Kale explained. Especially extreme energy fields or tempora. Distortions, both of which entropy generates naturally. That explains the instability in his earlier attempts, Caulifla nodded. How do we correct for it? Kale considered for a moment. The texts mention a technique called resonant anchoring, establishing harmonic patterns at the quantum level that resist external disruption. She turned to Goku. May I demonstrate something? At his nod, she knelt beside one of his transmuted flowers, placing her fingertips gently against its stem. Unlike the forceful energy projections Goku was accustomed to, Kale's power manifested as a subtle shimmer that seemed to sink into the plant's structure without changing its appearance. What did you do? He asked, sensing a fundamental difference in the flower though it looked identical. I aligned its quantum signature with baseline reality parameters, Kale explained, essentially giving it a dimensional address that resists displacement or reversal. Caulifla stared at her former student with undisguised amazement. That's from the third scroll of manifestation. How did you? The Eastern Temple archives contained practical applications I've been studying since you. Kale hesitated. Since you disappeared. It was the only way I could feel close to you, continuing our research. Something shifted in Caulifla's expression, a complex emotion Goku couldn't quite identify. Pride mixed with regret, perhaps. Or admiration tinged with guilt. You've surpassed me in theoretical knowledge, Caulifla acknowledged, genuine respect in her voice. I always knew you would, given time. Kale blushed at the praise. Only because I had your foundation to build upon. Goku observed this interaction with interest. The dynamic between the two women revealed layers he hadn't anticipated. Caulifla's fierce protective instinct balanced by genuine respect for Kale's intellectual growth, Kale's devotion tempered by newly developed independence. Can you teach me that anchoring technique? He asked Kale. It seems crucial for creating lasting transmutations. Of course. Kale's shy demeanor transformed when discussing technical aspects of elemental manipulation, confidence replacing hesitation. It requires precise control of your energy at the quantum level, finer than key manipulation but following similar principles. The training session that followed demonstrated the perfect complementary nature of his two instructors. Caulifla pushed limits with challenging applications and combat-oriented scenarios, while Kale provided technical refinement and theoretical underpinnings that enhanced stability and efficiency. By sunset, or the dimensional equivalent, as the omnipresent light gradually shifted to softer hues, Goku had mastered the basics of quantum anchoring. His transmutations now resistant to the energy fluctuations Caulifla threw at them as tests. As they returned to the dwelling, which had expanded automatically to accommodate their new member, Goku felt genuine optimism about their progress. At this rate, we might master the elemental disciplines faster than anticipated. Don't get overconfident, Caulifla warned, though without her usual edge. Matter manipulation is the most straightforward discipline. Spatial manipulation involves higher dimensional mathematics and non-Euclidean geometry. In theory, Kale added thoughtfully, his instinctive approach might actually work better for spatial manipulation than systematic training. The texts suggest elemental manipulation functions partly through intuitive recognition of universal patterns. Like seeing the code behind reality, Goku suggested. Both women looked at him in surprise. That's a surprisingly apt metaphor, Kale acknowledged. The ancient Saiyan term translates roughly as the writing between worlds. Caulifla shook her head in amused disbelief. Just when I think I've got you figured out, Goku, you say something unexpectedly profound. I have my moments, he grinned, dropping into a chair with casual grace. Usually between meals. As if on cue, the preparation area shimmered, producing an abundance of food that reflected the dwelling's awareness of an additional occupant. Kale's eyes widened at the display. This dimension responds to consciousness, she observed, running a hand above the preparation surface without touching it. Fascinating. Application of thought-matter interface technology. Whis called it a courtesy feature, Goku explained, already piling food onto his plate. Said something about angels getting tired of manually creating sustenance for mortals during training sessions. The meal that followed was more relaxed than previous ones, Kale's presence somehow balancing the intense dynamic between Goku and Caulifla. As they ate, Kale shared what she'd learned during her search, information about dimensional boundaries, ancient Saiyan outposts scattered across multiple universes, and theories about entropy's nature. The most concerning discovery, she explained, setting aside her plate, is that entropy appears to be gaining intelligence with each incursion. The first probes were instinctive, seeking elemental energy without strategy. Recent breaches show evidence of learning, of adaptation to defensive measures. Meaning it's not just a force but an entity capable of growth, Caulifla concluded grimly. That matches the progression described in the 7th Codex. Which we only had fragments of, Kale reminded her. But I found a complete version in the ruins of Arcana Prime. She reached into a small interdimensional pocket, a trick Goku noted for future learning, and withdrew an ancient tablet covered in symbols unfamiliar to him. The full text warns that entropy evolves through consumption, gaining attributes of what it absorbs. Quote, including knowledge and consciousness, Caulifla realized, examining the tablet. Sadala wasn't just destroyed, it was absorbed, including all our history and research on elemental forces. Which means entropy now knows what we know, Goku concluded, the implications settling heavily. It's not just hunting blindly for elemental energy, it understands what it's looking for. And how to counter it, Kale confirmed softly. At least, based on our ancestors' understanding. A somber silence fell over the group as they processed this information. Goku felt the weight of responsibility more acutely than ever, not just mastering new abilities for the thrill of growth, but developing countermeasures against an adversary that evolved with each encounter. We need to innovate, he said finally, breaking the silence. If entropy knows traditional elemental techniques from absorbing your world's knowledge, we need to develop applications it won't anticipate. Caulifla looked at him with newfound respect. Tactical thinking from the man who usually charges headfirst into battle. I'm impressed. I've learned a few things over the years, Goku replied with a small smile. Usually after getting beaten badly enough. He's right, though, Kale said, setting the tablet aside. The ancient techniques were formalized over millennia. If we combine the foundation of traditional elemental manipulation with Goku's unconventional approach to key application, we create a hybrid methodology entropy won't recognize, Caulifla finished, excitement building in her voice. Goku, how did you develop your techniques? Not the ones you learned from others, but the ones unique to you. Goku considered this question seriously. I guess I've always approached energy work through feeling rather than formula. When I need a new technique, I visualize the outcome, then experiment until the energy responds correctly. He shrugged. It's not very scientific, but it's precisely what we need, Kale said with growing enthusiasm. The ancient texts are filled with rigid formulations, specific hand positions, exact energy ratios, prescribed visualization sequences. Effective, but predictable. Quote, and entropy now knows them all, Caulifla added, pacing with renewed energy. But it can't predict innovations it's never encountered. She stopped suddenly, turning to Goku with intensity burning in her eyes. Show us something completely unique to you, a technique you developed through intuition alone. Goku thought for a moment, then smiled. The spur. It bomb isn't entirely my creation. I learned it from King Kai, but my application of it evolved in ways he never taught me. He extended his hand, palm up. At its core, it's about gathering energy free, easily given and focusing it through a pure vessel. Above his palm, a miniature sphere of radiant energy formed. Not the massive destructive orb of the full technique, but a perfect representation in reduced scale. Unlike his normal blue-white ki, this energy contained a rainbow of colors shifting in continuous patterns. The original technique gathers energy from living beings, Goku explained as. The tiny spirit bomb rotated above his hand. But over time, I discovered it could also incorporate environmental energy, universal forces, even spiritual essence beyond conventional ki. Kale leaned forward, studying the phenomenon with scholarly intensity. You're creating a consensual energy matrix, a harmonization of disparate forces that would normally repel each other. I never thought of it that way, Goku admitted. I just ask the energy to help, and it does. Ask, Caulifla repeated, focusing on the word. Not command or control, of course. Goku looked surprised at the clarification. Forced energy resists and diminishes. Freely given energy multiplies and harmonizes. Kale and Caulifla exchanged meaningful glances. That's it, Kale whispered. The fundamental difference in approach. The ancient techniques are all based on command and control, Caulifla explained, excitement building in her voice. Imposing will upon elemental forces through precise formulae. Active but limited, and now known to our enemy. But Goku's approach is collaborative rather than dominant, Kale continued, the two women building on each other's thoughts with practiced ease. He doesn't force reality to bend, he invites it to participate in transformation. Goku absorbed their analysis, recognizing truth in their assessment of his instinctive methodology. He'd never codified his approach to energy work. It had always been as natural as breathing, an ongoing conversation with the forces around and within him rather than a mastery over them. So we develop elemental technique. Based on collaboration rather than command, he summarized. Working with creation's natural patterns instead of imposing artificial ones. Exactly, both women confirmed simultaneously. It's revolutionary, Kale added softly, and perfectly aligned with what the oldest fragments suggest was the original Saiyan approach, before formalization created rigid systems. Before we forgot our pose and became conquerors instead of guardians, Caulifla said with a hint of bitterness. She turned to Goku with newfound determination. We start fresh tomorrow, not just teaching you ancient techniques, but developing new methodologies based on your natural approach. Goku nodded, feeling something shift in their dynamic, no longer merely teacher and student, but collaborators in innovation. The spirit bomb continued rotating above his palm, its gentle light illuminating their faces with shifting patterns of color. There's something else we should discuss, Kale said after a moment, her tone becoming more hesitant. Something I discovered about elemental practitioners that may be relevant to our situation. What is it? Caulifla prompted when Kale hesitated. The most powerful elemental masters in ancient times weren't solitary practitioners, Kale explained, a faint blush coloring her cheeks. They worked in harmonic triads, three Saiyans with complementary energy signatures. Who could amplify and stabilize each other's abilities? Triads, Goku repeated, curious. Like a three-person fusion. Not exactly. Kale's blush deepened slightly, more like a permanent resonance bond that allowed energy to flow freely between three individuals, creating a closed circuit of power that was greater than the sum of its parts. Caulifla's eyes narrowed suspiciously. Why haven't you mentioned this before? Kale's gaze dropped to her hands. Because the texts are quite explicit about the nature of these bonds. They were not merely professional arrangements, but deeply personal connections between individuals who were, she hesitated, intimately compatible. Intimately, Caulifla repeated flatly. You mean, life partners, Kale confirmed, still not meeting their eyes. In all senses of the term. An awkward silence descended on the room. Goku blinked, processing this information with his characteristic directness. So the strongest elemental practitioners were basically in three-way relationships. He summarized with far less embarrassment than either woman seemed to feel. That's unexpected. The texts emphasize that the emotional and physical connection created energy pathways impossible to achieve through other means, Kale explained, her scientific tone at odds with her evident discomfort with the subject. Complete trust and genuine affection were essential for stable triad formation. And you think this applies to us? Caulifla demanded, crossing her arms defensively. I don't know, Kale admitted. But our energy signatures show preliminary harmonic compatibility. And given the magnitude of the threat we face, she finally looked up. It seemed relevant information to consider. Goku observed the tension between the two women with growing understanding. The complex dynamic he'd sensed earlier took on new dimensions, not just mentor and student, not just friends separated by tragedy, but something with deeper potential that neither had fully acknowledged. Well, he said finally, breaking the uncomfortable silence, that's definitely something to think about. But maybe we focus on mastering the basics before worrying about advanced techniques requiring special relationships. Relief flickered across both women's faces at his diplomatic response. Agreed, Caulifla said firmly. One step at a time. First, we innovate on matter manipulation using Goku's collaborative approach. Then we tackle spatial distortion with the same methodology. And monitor entropy's movements throughout, Kale added, clearly grateful for the return to practical matters. She activated her crystalline device again, displaying the multiversal map. All set proximity alerts for any new incursions. As they settled into planning the next day's training, the awkwardness gradually dissipated, replaced by purposeful discussion. Yet Goku noticed subtle shifts in awareness between all three of them, fleeting glances, momentary hesitations. A new consciousness of each other as more than simply allies against a common threat. Later, as they prepared for rest, the dwelling automatically configured itself into 3 separate sleeping spaces while maintaining a communal central area. Goku settled onto his bed, mind racing with the day's revelations and implications for their training. Through the translucent divider, he could hear Caulifla and Kale speaking in hushed tones, their conversation too quiet to discern specific words but the emotional undercurrent evident even at a distance. He found himself reflecting on Kale's revelation about elemental triads with curiosity rather than discomfort. While his relationship with Chi-Chi had been the cornerstone of his adult life, he'd always maintained connections had transcended conventional boundaries, friendships that ran as deep as family, rivalries that approached intimacy in their intensity, bonds forged in battle that defied simple categorization. The idea that elemental mastery might require emotional and physical intimacy between practitioners didn't shock him as it seemed to have shocked Caulifla. If anything, it aligned with his intuitive understanding of energy work as fundamentally relational rather than merely technical. Power, in his experience, always flowed most freely between those who trusted each other completely. Sleep eventually claimed him amid these reflections. His dreams filled with images of ancient Saiyans working in perfect harmony to maintain cosmic balance, 3 figures with joined hands standing against encroaching darkness. Their combined light holding chaos at bay. Morning, or what passed for morning in the timeless dimension, brought renewed focus to their training. By unspoken agreement, none of them reference Kale's revelation about elemental triads, instead channeling their energy into developing the new collaborative approach to matter manipulation. The results exceeded even their optimistic expectations. By midday, Goku had progressed from simple transmutation to complex matter conversion involving multiple simultaneous transformations. Where before he had created gardens from barren ground, now he orchestrated ecological systems, transmuting areas of the dimension into self-sustaining biomes with interconnected elements that evolved in response to their environment. The stability is unprecedented, Kale observed, analyzing a miniature forest ecosystem Goku had created. These transformations aren't just maintaining form, they're adapting and growing. Because he's not forcing a static pattern on reality, Caulifla realized. Watching a tiny stream carve its own path through responsive terrain. He's establishing initial conditions then allowing natural development. Goku grinned, pleased with their approval but more excited by the possibilities this approach unlocked. It's like planting seeds instead of building structures. The energy knows what it wants to become if you let it. The afternoon session shifted to preliminary exercises in spatial manipulation, the ability to alter dimensional properties of reality rather than merely its material composition. Here, Kale's expertise proved invaluable, her natural sensitivity to dimensional energies providing insights Caulifla's more combat-oriented training lacked. Space isn't empty, Kale explained as they stood before an area Goku was attempting to manipulate. It's a flexible medium with properties that respond to consciousness, particularly consciousness attuned to elemental frequencies. Like fabric that can be folded, Goku suggested, thinking of his enhanced instant transmission experience during awakening. Exactly, Kale confirmed, but rather than forcing the fold, try inviting the space to connect WITH itself across the intervening distance. Goku extended his awareness into the dimensional fabric, not with the sharp focus of teleportation but with gentle intention, suggesting rather than demanding. To his surprise, the space before him responded eagerly, reality folding not with the mechanical precision of his instant transmission but with fluid grace, like water flowing into its natural level. A perfect circular portal formed, connecting their position with a location several kilometers away without traversing the intervening space. Unlike conventional portals created by godly technology, this opening had no distinct edges, reality simply curved smoothly from one location to another as if the 2 points had always been adjacent. Remarkable, Kale whispered, examining the phenomenon with scientific wonder. No energy signature for entropy to detect, no dimensional stress patterns. It's as if space itself agrees with the new configuration. Because it does, Goku realized, understanding flowing through him with intuitive clarity. Space wants to be connected. Separation is the illusion, not connection. Caulifla stared at him. That's from the fifth principle of dimensional harmony. How could you know that without reading the texts? Goku shrugged. It just feels true when I work with the energy. Anamnesis, Kale said softly. The removal of forgetting. You're not learning these principles, you're remembering them at a cellular level. The training continued with accelerating progress through the afternoon and evening. By nightfall, Goku had mastered basic spatial manipulation to the point of creating stable connections between distant points, altering local gravitational constants, and even generating pocket dimensions similar to but smaller than their training space. As they gathered for the evening meal, exhausted but exhilarated by the day's achievements, a sharp alert tone cut through their conversation. Kale immediately activated her crystalline device. The multiversal map materializing above the table, now showing alarming changes from the previous day. Multiple simultaneous incursions, she reported, voice tight with concern. Entropy is no longer merely probing, it's establishing beachheads in 7 different universes. Caulifla leaned forward, studying the display intently. Pattern, systematic, Kale confirmed grimly. Each incursion targets a nexus point where dimensional barriers are naturally thinner. She expanded a particular section of the map. This is the most concerning. Universe 7, approximately 1 light-year from Earth. Goku's expression hardened. It's looking for me, using Earth as a reference point. Most likely, Kale agreed. Your energy signature is strongest there, especially before your awakening. Entropy would detect the residual patterns and investigate. We're not ready, Caulifla stated flatly. Matter manipulation is progressing well, but spatial manipulation is barely initialized. And we haven't even touched temporal adjustments. But we can't wait, Goku countered, studying the map with uncharacteristic intensity. If these incursions are establishing footholds, every moment strengthens entropy's position. Intervention now would be premature, Kale advised, though reluctance colored her tone. Without full elemental mastery, you'd be limited to reactive defense. Rather than fundamental counter-creation. Goku paced the room, energy crackling around him in response to his emotional state. How long before these incursions threatened populated worlds? Kale manipulated the display, running calculations. At current expansion rates, approximately 72 hours in baseline reality. Given the time differential in this dimension, that's weeks of training time for us, Caulifla finished. Enough to consolidate spatial manipulation and begin temporal adjustments. Goku stopped pacing, decision crystallizing. Then we intensify training further. Minimal rest, maximum progress. He turned to his instructors, determination evident in every line of his body. I've faced impossible timelines before. This is no different, except the stakes are literally all of existence. Caulifla pointed out dryly, though her expression showed approval of his resolve. All the more reason to succeed, Goku replied simply. The training that followed pushed beyond conventional limits. Even by Saiyan standards, days blurred together in intensive practice sessions that stretched their endurance and creativity. Caulifla drove physical application with relent. Less precision while Kale provided theoretical frameworks that accelerated understanding. Goku absorbed both approaches, his natural learning curve steepening as intuitive connections formed between disciplines. Spatial manipulation progressed from simple portal creation to complex dimensional engineering, folding space into recursive patterns, creating selective permeability barriers, and estably Xing anchor points resistant to entropic dissolution. The collaborative methodology proved increasingly effective, with Goku's innovations inspiring new theoretical applications from Kale, which Kefla then refined into practical techniques. Through it all, the dynamics between the three Saiyans evolved in subtle but significant ways. The intensity of shared purpose forged deeper connections than mere training could explain. Working with elemental forces required vulnerabilities beyond physical exertion. Opening awareness to cosmic patterns meant lowering protective barriers, allowing others to perceive aspects of self typically hidden. During particularly demanding sessions, they established energy-sharing practices out of necessity, Caulifla or Kale providing stability when Goku's manipulations threatened to overwhelm his still developing control. These moments of connection, while initiated for practical purposes, created resonance patterns between them that lingered after physical contact ended. None of them explicitly referenced Kale's revelation about elemental triads, yet the potential hummed beneath their interactions like a subharmonic frequency, not demanding attention but impossible to ignore completely. In quiet moments between training sessions, glances held longer than necessary, casual touches conveyed more than intended, and the dwelling spaces seemed to shrink despite its adaptive nature. 2 weeks into this intensified regimen, during a rare rest period, Kale's monitoring device emitted an alarm tone different from previous alerts, higher-pitched and more urgent. What is it? Caulifla demanded as Kale activated the display with unusual haste. The multiversal map materialized, now showing a massive disturbance centered precisely on their location, or rather, on the pocket dimension containing them. Entropy, Kale whispered, face pale. It's found us. The dimensional walls surrounding them shuddered, visible ripples running through reality itself. The perfect stability Whis had engineered began showing hairline fractures, tiny fissures of absolute darkness appearing and spreading like cracks in ice. How? Caulifla demanded. This dimension was supposed to be undetectable. It followed my dimensional trail, Kale realized with horror. The Nexus band. It leaves traces when crossing boundaries. I led it straight to us. No time for blame, Goku said firmly. Already shifting into battle readiness. Can we contact Whis? External communications are blocked, Kale reported after checking her device. The dimensional barriers are being systematically corrupted. Another tremor shook their sanctuary, stronger than before. The fractures widened, absolute darkness seeping through like negative light. We need to leave, Caulifla decided. Kale, can the Nexus band get us out? Kale shook her head. Not all of us together, and not quickly enough. The band needs time to calculate exit coordinates, and entropy is disrupting dimensional constants. Then we fight, Goku stated simply, power building around him in golden waves. Not the familiar aura of Super Saiyan transformation but the more fundamental radiance of elemental energy. We've been training for exactly this. Not yet, Caulifla countered, frustration evident in her voice. You're not ready for direct confrontation. Ready or not, it's here, Goku replied. moving toward the largest fracture. And I won't hide while it threatens everything we care about. The darkness beyond the fracture pulsed, as if sensing his approach. The crack widened suddenly, reality peeling back to reveal a void more absolute than space itself, not merely the absence of light but the negation of existence. Within this impossible darkness, something moved, a presence without form, consciousness without body. Elemental One, a voice resonated, not through air but directly into their awareness. At last, Goku stood before the fracture, elemental energy cascading around him in protective layers. You've been looking for me. For eons, the voice confirmed, a sound like universes colliding given language. Since the forgetting, when balance was broken. Lord Entropy, Kale whispered. Scientific curiosity warring with primal fear in her expression. A title given by those who feared dissolution, the voice acknowledged. I am the necessary end that precedes beginning. The rest between heartbeats. The silence between notes. You consume Sadala, Caulifla accused, anger burning away fear. 70 billion lives erased without purpose. Purpose is a mortal concept, Entropy responded. The darkness pulsing with what might have been amusement. I am function, not intention. Consumption is my nature, as creation is his. The formless awareness seemed to focus more intensely on Goku. But the cycle is broken. Creation continues unchecked while dissolution is constrained. Balance fails. Goku felt truth in the entity's words, a fundamental principle underlying reality itself. Creation and dissolution were cosmic partners, neither meant to dominate eternally. Yet he also sensed distortion, corruption in the natural function. You're not just dissolution, he challenged. Insight flowing through his awakening consciousness. You've become consumption without renewal. You take but don't return. The darkness rippled, the equivalent of surprise. Perception beyond expectation. The Elemental One remembers more than anticipated. I remember what Saiyans were, Goku confirmed, power building within him. Guardians of balance, not just warriors. Stewards of the cosmic cycle. Then you understand necessity, Entropy responded. Creation has dominated too long. The universes swell with excess. Dissolution must restore equilibrium, not through obliteration. Goku countered. Balance requires transformation, not annihilation. The fractures widened further, darkness flowing into their sanctuary like negative light. Where it touched, the transmuted landscapes Goku had created during training. Matter unraveled, not destroying but deconstructing to component particles, returning complexity to simplicity. Step aside, Caulifla ordered, moving to position herself between Goku and the encroaching void. We'll hold it back while you escape. Your elemental powers are too important to risk before full awakening. No, Goku said firmly, placing a hand on her shoulder. We face this together or not at all. Kale joined them, completing a natural triangle formation that felt instinctively right. Harmony against dissolution, she said softly. As the ancients did, the darkness paused in its advance, the formless awareness studying their united stance with what felt like curiosity. Interesting. The triad formation persists. TS in racial memory despite the forgetting. More than memory, Goku replied, feeling energy resonating between himself and the two women. Not through conscious technique but natural affinity. Power circulated through their triangle, amplifying with each cycle like feedback building in an audio system. Show me, Entropy challenged, the void pulsing with anticipation. Show me what remains of Guardians who once maintained what I unmade. Without conscious planning, the three Saiyans moved in perfect synchronicity. Caulifla's hand clasped Goku's left, Kale's took his right, completing a circuit that felt as natural as breathing. Energy surged through the connection, not individual key signatures but a harmonic blend that transcended personal power. Goku channeled this combined force his awakening elemental consciousness, not attacking the darkness but addressing the imbalance it represented. Where void touched creation, he established boundaries, not walls but permeable membranes that allowed exchange without consumption. Balance, not dominance, he stated, the words carrying power beyond sound. Renewal, not erasure. The elemental energy flowing through their CTED circuit manifested as golden light that didn't fight darkness but defined its proper place, creating not opposition but complementary function. Where light and void met, a new pattern emerged, Nate. Her creation nor dissolution but dynamic equilibrium. You remember more than expected, entropy acknowledged, the darkness receding slightly. But memory is not mastery. The triad is incomplete without binding. We are bound by purpose. Caulifla declared fiercely. Purpose is temporary, entropy countered. True balance requires permanent resonance, the ancient way. The implication hung in the space between them, echoing Kale's earlier revelation about elemental triads and their intimate nature. Before any of them could respond, the dimensional barriers trembled violently, not from entropy's presence but from external intervention. A familiar staff pierced the fabric of reality, creating a perfectly circular opening unlike the jagged fractures of entropy's making. Through this portal stepped Whis, his usually serene expression replaced by focused determination. Fascinating, the angel observed, taking in the standoff with analytical calm. Direct entropy manifestation in a sealed dimension. Most irregular. Caretaker. Entropy acknowledged, the darkness drawing back further. This encounter is premature. The elemental one is not yet complete. Indeed, Whis agreed, tap. Ping his staff once on the dimensional floor. Which is why I must insist on its conclusion. Energy radiated from the staff. Not destructive force but restructuring power that reinforced the dimensional boundaries, sealing fractures and stabilizing reality patterns. The cycle must be restored, entropy insisted, though its presence was already fading as Whis's power reasserted dimensional integrity. Creation without balance leads to stagnation. Balance in all things, Whis acknowledged, including timing. Depart now, return when called. The darkness hesitated, then receded completely, not destroyed but voluntarily withdrawing. We will meet again, Elemental One, entropy's voice resonated as it faded. When your awakening is complete. As the last traces of void disappeared, the dimensional barriers solidified once more. Whis turned to the three Saiyans, who still stood in their triangle formation, hands linked and energy flowing between them. Well, the angel said with a hint of amusement. It seems you've had an eventful training period. Lord Beerus will be most displeased about the dimensional damage. Goku released the women's hands somewhat reluctantly, the harmonic energy fading as their circuit broke. Whis, you know what that was. You called it by name. Of course, Whis replied, as if surprised by the question. Entropy is a fundamental cosmic function, as essential to universal operation as creation itself. Angels are quite familiar with all aspects of cosmic maintenance. But it consumed an entire planet, Caulifla protested. 70 billion lives. A most unfortunate deviation from proper function, Whis acknowledged, his expression growing serious. Entropy's current manifestation appears to be operating outside normal parameters, consuming, rather than simply unmaking for renewal. Most concerning. Can it be stopped? Kale asked, scientific curiosity overcoming lingering fear. Not stopped, Whis corrected. Restored to proper function. Entropy is not meant to be destroyed any more than creation is, both are necessary for cosmic health. He turned to Goku with unusual intensity. Which is precisely why the elemental Saiyan awakening is significant. The role is not to destroy entropy but to restore balance to fundamental forces. That's what the ancient texts describe, Kale confirmed. Saiyans as guardians of cosmic equilibrium, maintaining boundaries between fundamental forces. Before we forgot, Caulifla added bitterly, and became destroyers instead of guardians. Whis nodded. The cycle of racial remembering and forgetting is itself part of cosmic rhythm. Now, however, we face a more immediate concern. He gestured to the dimensional boundaries, which though repaired still showed evidence of stress. This training space is compromised. Entropy will find it again with minimal effort. Then we leave, Goku concluded. Continue training somewhere else. Not merely elsewhere, Whis clarified. But elsewhere. Lord Beerus and I have prepared an alternative that exists outside conventional temporal flow, a hyperbolic dimension where centuries can pass without external progression. Like the hyperbolic time chamber on Earth? Goku asked. Similar in concept but vastly more sophisticated, Whis confirmed. With one significant limitation. Once you enter, you cannot exit until elemental awakening is calm. Complete or the external situation becomes dire enough to force emergence. The three Saiyans exchanged glances, and spoken communication passing between them. We're ready, Goku decided, speaking for all of them. Whatever it takes to complete this awakening properly. Whis studied them with ancient eyes that had witnessed countless civilizations rise and fall. I should mention that Lord Beerus I observed your interaction with entropy. The triad formation you instinctively adopted is noteworthy. Kale blushed faintly while Caulifla crossed her arms defensively. The harmonization of your energy signatures suggests exceptional compatibility, Whis continued, diplomatic but direct. In ancient times, such natural resonance was considered auspicious for elemental practitioners. Aware of the historical implications, Caulifla stated flatly. It's not relevant to our training. On the contrary, Whis corrected gently. Complete elemental awakening historically required triad bonding precisely because it stabilized the extraordinary power involved. Without such anchoring, elemental abilities tend toward instability under stress. There must be alternatives, Caulifla insisted. Perhaps, Whis acknowledged, though none as efficient or enduring. His expression softened slightly. I merely present historical fact. What you choose to do with this information is entirely your decision. Goku, characteristically direct, addressed the unspoken tension. If forming a triad, whatever that fully means, helps defeat entropy and protect everyone, I'm willing to consider it. He looked at Caulifla and Kale. But only if everyone feels the same. No pressure, no obligations. This isn't the time to discuss this, Caulifla declared, though her usual certainty seemed decompromised by a complex mix of emotions. Indeed, Whis agreed smoothly. We should depart immediately. The new training dimension awaits, and time, however relative, remains of the essence. With a tap of his staff, Whis created a portal different from any they'd seen before, a spiraling vortex of light that seemed to bend inward infinitely. One moment before we depart, the angel added, Hold mention that Lord Beerus has authorized me to inform certain parties of your situation, Goku. Your family now understands you are engaged in training vital to universal safety, though specific details have been withheld for security reasons. Relief flickered across Goku's features. Thank you, Whis. I didn't want them worrying. They always worry, Whis noted with gentle understanding. Quote, but they also trust you to return when your task is complete. He gestured toward the portal. Shall we? As they prepared to step through, Goku felt a moment of profound clarity, awareness that Veer lay beyond this threshold would transform not just his abilities but his understanding of himself, his heritage, and his connections to the two fierce warriors who had become essential to his awakening. The path ahead would demand more than physical courage or determination. It would require emotional honesty and vulnerability unlike any challenge he'd faced before. With characteristic resolution, he stepped forward into spiraling light, Caulifla and Kale at his sides. The dimensional doorway closed behind them, sealing their commitment to whatever awakening, elemental and personal, awaited in the timeless space beyond. Chapter 2 End. The End. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Remember to subscribe and like this video. See you in the next video.